All right, today we're jumping right into something big. A massive federal crackdown on hundreds of fraudulent truck driving schools all across the country. We're talking about operations that were putting all of us at risk every single day on our nation's highways.
Here's a thought that's probably never crossed your mind. You're driving down the highway and this massive semi-truck barrels past you. You just assume, right, that the person behind the wheel is a pro, that they've had tons of training. But what if? What if that person's training was a total sham?
I know. That sounds pretty dramatic, right? The wild, wild west. But that's a direct quote from the U.S. Transportation Secretary, Sean P. Duffy. And it really paints a picture of just how out of control things had gotten, creating this dangerous free-for-all on our roads.
So, what does this Wild West really look like? Well, you've got this huge demand for truck drivers. And whenever that happens, a kind of shadow industry pops up to cut corners. And an environment like that doesn't just mean a few rules get bent. No, we're talking about a serious, direct threat to every single one of us on the road, all because of these sham driving schools just churning out unprepared drivers.
And believe it or not, the villain in this story actually has a name, the Cdl Mill. And look, this isn't just some school that's not very good. We're talking about a completely fraudulent operation, one that's designed to take your money while totally ignoring federal safety standards and giving drivers training that is dangerously bad.
Okay, so what were these places actually doing that made them so dangerous? Let's get into the specifics. Let's break down the anatomy of one of these sham schools.
Well, investigators started seeing the same problems over and over again. First off, you had unqualified teachers. I mean, think about it. People teaching others to drive a massive truck who weren't even properly licensed themselves. They were also using the wrong vehicles for training. They were signing off on incomplete assessments, pretty much just rubber stamping students through. And a whole lot of them were just flat out ignoring their own state's regulations.
But here's the part that is, honestly, it's just terrifying. This wasn't just about hauling cargo, no. Some of these unqualified instructors were teaching people how to drive school buses. Yeah, let that sink in for a second.
So, faced with this really alarming reality, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration knew they couldn't just send out a memo. They had to act, and they acted big, launching this incredible, nationwide sting operation to shut these places down for good.
And man, did they move fast. The whole thing kicked off on one specific day, February 18th, 2026. That's when the FMCSA unleashed this massive, perfectly coordinated crackdown that hit every corner of the country at once.
And to pull this off, you can't just send a few people. The agency basically mobilized a small army. We're talking over 300 federal investigators sent out all across the country to conduct these investigations in person at the same time. And look at this timeline. It just shows you how incredibly efficient this whole thing was. This wasn't some long, drawn-out investigation that took months. The entire nationwide sting, it was done and dusted in just 5 days.
Yeah, the numbers that came out of that 5-day blitz are just staggering. In that super short window, those 300-plus investigators pulled off, get this, 1,426 on-site stings and investigations. That's an absolutely insane pace.
And the guy in charge, FMCSA Administrator Derek D. Bars, he basically drew a line in the sand. He made it crystal clear. If a school is using the wrong trucks or their teachers aren't qualified, they have absolutely no business training anyone. Period. End of story. Okay, so a huge 5-day operation. What did it all add up to? Let's look at the results and see how this actually made our roads safer.
All right, let's break down the immediate fallout. First, they issued 448 notices telling these non-compliant schools they were going to be removed from the registry. Then, another 109 schools, they just packed it in and shut down voluntarily, probably because they heard the feds were coming. On top of that, another 97 are still being investigated.
So you do the math on all that, and the impact is it's huge. Over 550 of these sham schools were either told to shut down or they're under the microscope right now. That is a ton of bad actors taken off the board.
So really, it all boils down to this simple comparison. On one hand, you have a real, compliant school doing things by the book with qualified instructors and the right vehicles. On the other, you have the sham school, the Cdl Mill, just cutting every possible corner, putting all of us at risk. And at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, right? It's about our safety. It's about knowing, having some confidence that the person driving that 18-wheeler, or maybe more importantly, your kid's school bus, actually got real, legitimate training.
So yeah, this 5-day takedown, a huge success, no question. Hundreds of these sham schools are off the list. But it does leave us with a really important question, doesn't it? We've cleaned house for now, but how do we stop new ones from just popping up and taking their place? That's the real challenge moving forward.